All right, let's jump into this deep dive. We got a pretty impactful article sent in called Surviving Hate, a Black LGBTQ Lens on 2025.
Written by Allison Rowe.
Right, by Allison Roll. It digs into the experiences of Black LGBTQ individuals in 2025, something we've all been exploring, and I'm ready to unpack it.
Yeah, this piece is really something. It goes beyond just kind of listing the challenges. Rowe really weaves in the history, the present, and even some glimmers of hope and resilience from the community.
Okay, so like right off the bat, the article dives into intersectionality. We hear this term all the time, but honestly, sometimes it feels like, I don't know, easier said than understood. Is there a way to kind of break that down a bit more?
Totally. Think of it visually, like a Venn diagram.
Okay.
One circle is race, the other is sexual orientation, and right where they overlap. That's the space where the unique experiences of a Black LGBTQ person exist. It's not just adding those identities together, it's about how they multiply the challenges they face.
So it's not just facing racism over here and homophobia over there. It's like those two forces can actually, combine to make the discrimination even worse.
Exactly. And sometimes it even leads to marginalization within their own communities.
Yeah.
Think about it, facing racism from the LGBTQ plus community and then facing homophobia within Black communities.
Wow.
It creates a very specific, very often misunderstood type of marginalization.
Okay, yeah, that makes intersectionality way more clear. Like it adds this whole other layer to how people move through the world. And like to really get what Black LGBTQ folks are dealing with in 2025, we got to grasp that concept first. Now, Roe doesn't just drop us in 2025, right? She takes us back in time a bit.
Yeah, she links this present-day struggle to things like the civil rights movement, the Stonewall riots, and she brings up this really interesting figure, Bayard Rustin. He was essential to the civil rights movement.
Okay.
But a lot of people don't know. He was an openly gay man.
Oh, wow. That must have been so tough back then, given like the whole social climate.
Exactly. There was enormous pressure on him to stay closeted, and people often used his sexuality to try and discredit the work he was doing.
Right.
It shows how interconnected these fights for equality really are, and that those folks standing at the intersection of, multiple marginalized identities, they often face the biggest hurdles.
It reminds me that progress isn't always a straight line forward. We have these huge leaps, then setbacks, and the fight keeps going. Now, Roe does bring us to 2025, and she gets real. She doesn't sugarcoat it. There's some pretty heavy statistics about hate crimes targeting Black LGBTQ people specifically.
Yeah, she cites a 60% rate of hate crimes in urban areas, and these are crimes targeting both Black and LGBTQ identities. It's way higher than what non-LGBTQ folks experience. And what makes it even more concerning is the legal situation right now.
What do you mean? I thought things were, like, moving in a better direction legally.
Well, sure, some states have made progress with laws protecting LGBTQ rights, but others are trying to roll them back. And on a federal level, we're still fighting for basic protections. This whole back and forth creates so much fear and uncertainty.
And that directly affects the hate crime numbers.
Exactly.
So we've got this historical context of like intertwined struggles for equality, then the reality of increased hate crimes in 2025, and on top of it all, this uncertain legal landscape. That paints a pretty intense picture. It makes you wonder about the mental and emotional well-being of, Black LGBTQ individuals dealing with all of this.
That's a crucial point, and it's actually where the article goes next. It's no surprise that this constant threat of discrimination, of violence, it has a huge toll on mental health. Rowe highlights the rising rates of anxiety, depression, feelings of isolation within the Black LGBTQ community.
And, it's probably even harder to reach out for help when you consider the stigma around mental health, especially in certain communities.
You got it. Rowe points out a heartbreaking reality, the fear of rejection, not just from society as a whole, but even within their own communities. It prevents a lot of people from getting the help they need. And it just shows how badly we need culturally competent mental health services, places where people feel safe and seen without judgment.
It's like another layer of complexity on an already complex situation. So we've got the historical context, the harsh realities of 2025, a mental health crisis brewing. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
That's where the article takes a really interesting turn. Despite all this, Rowe highlights the incredible resilience within the Black LGBTQ community. It's not just surviving, it's about pushing for change, reclaiming power, finding joy, even in the midst of all this.
Okay, now that's what I want to hear more about, this resilience in action.
Well, one of the main examples Rowe gives is the rise of grassroots groups like the Black LGBTQ Alliance. This organization is all about action, providing resources, advocating for policy changes, offering support tailored to the needs of this community.
That's so key. It's one thing to talk about change, it's another to actually create those systems that help people.
Yeah.
Can you give us an idea of what kind of resources they offer?
They do a little bit of everything, connecting people with therapists who understand their specific needs, mentorship programs for younger folks, even workshops on financial literacy, career development, you name it.
Wow.
They're really trying to tackle these issues from all angles.
It sounds like a much more holistic approach to support, like recognizing that this community needs more than just, safety. They need a chance to thrive. Now, Roe also talked about social media as a tool for resilience, right?
Yes. Social media in 2025, it's a double-edged sword for sure, but this community is using it in amazing ways. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they're sharing their stories, connecting with each other, raising awareness about the issues.
Building that solidarity, that sense of community.
Exactly. Imagine feeling isolated or misunderstood. Then suddenly you find this whole online community that gets it, that lifts you up. It's a virtual support system.
And it's more than just support, right?
Right. These communities are also mobilizing. They're organizing protests, fundraising for causes. It's really inspiring to see how digital tools can create real-world change.
It shows how resourceful and determined this community is. They're taking what they've got and making something powerful out of it. Now, we've talked about the heavy stuff, the hate crimes, the legal battles, but even with all that, Roe really emphasizes the importance of celebrating joy and resilience, doesn't she?
She does, and I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from the whole piece. It's a reminder that even in the face of so much adversity, it's essential to hold on to hope, to find moments of happiness, to celebrate the strength and beauty within this community.
It's like a refusal to be defined just by the struggle.
That's right.
It's about taking back joy, taking back agency, even when the system is working against you.
Roe even argues that finding joy, celebrating resilience, it can be a form of resistance in itself. Like saying, we will not be broken, we will not let hate define us.
That's powerful. Now, I remember from the outline something about representation being important. Does Roe touch on that?
She does, and it's huge. She argues that seeing yourself reflected in the world around you, in movies, music, books, it can have a huge impact on your sense of self-worth.
And for a community that's been so marginalized, misrepresented, seeing themselves in a positive light, that's got to be incredibly validating.
For sure. It's about seeing yourself as the hero, as someone worthy of love and respect. It's about challenging those harmful stereotypes and showing the full spectrum of human experience within the Black LGBTQ community.
So it's more than just entertainment. Representation is about changing the narrative, changing how society sees this community. Now, the article celebrates this community's resilience, but it also doesn't let the rest of us off the hook. Roe's pretty clear that allies have a big role to play.
You're right. And she doesn't just say be an ally. She really breaks down what true allyship looks like. It's about action, not just words.
So what does that action look like? What can our listeners actually do to move beyond just, passive support and become active allies?
Well, one of the most important things is education. Take the time to learn about the history of the Black LGBTQ community, really understand the issues they face, get familiar with the language and concepts.
It's about going beyond assumptions and actually seeking out the right information. Where would you suggest folks go for that kind of education?
Oh, there are so many great resources. Following Black LGBTQ activists and organizations on social media is a good start. Reading books and articles by Black LGBTQ authors, checking out documentaries and films that center their experiences.
Diversifying those voices you listen to, getting perspectives that maybe challenge your own.
Absolutely. And once you started learning, it's about putting that knowledge into action, challenging injustice wherever you can in your own circles.
So it's not enough to just read a book or watch a movie.
Right. It's got to lead to something more.
It's about taking that knowledge and doing something with it.
Exactly. It could be something small, like correcting someone who's using harmful language, or speaking up when you witness discrimination.
Donating to organizations, going to rallies, even just making your own spaces more inclusive.
Exactly. It's about creating those safe and welcoming environments.
All this sounds amazing, but I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by the idea of allyship, like they need to become experts overnight or have all the answers. What would you say to someone who feels that way?
Start small, but start somewhere. Allyship is a journey. It's not about reaching some perfect endpoint. It's about consistently showing up, doing the work, learning and growing along the way.
Progress, not perfection.
Yes. And remember, every little thing helps. If you see something, say something. If you have a platform, use it to amplify the voices that need to be heard. If you have resources, share them.
We all have a role to play, right, in making the world more just and equal.
That's the heart of it. And speaking of roles, Rowe actually digs into the importance of representation in media and the arts. She argues that seeing yourself portrayed positively, authentically, it can be so powerful.
It makes me think about how important it is to support Black LGBTQ creators, the filmmakers, musicians, writers, artists. Their voices need to be heard.
Couldn't agree more. Supporting their work, sharing their stories, pushing for more diversity in the media we consume, it all helps to change the narrative and create a world that's more inclusive.
It's about recognizing that art has the power to shape how we see the world and each other.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the challenges, the history, the legal stuff, even the mental health struggles. But we've also seen this amazing resilience, the rise of grassroots movements, the power of social media, the role of representation and allyship.
Yeah, this conversation's been so insightful. I feel like I've learned so much about this community, their strength, their hope for the future, even in the face of everything.
Me too.
Hmm.
And as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to hear from our listener. What's resonating with you? What new perspectives have you gained? What actions are you feeling inspired to take?
We'll be back in just a moment to continue this conversation. We're back, ready to keep digging into surviving hate. Before the break, we were talking about this really inspiring resilience we're seeing in the Black LGBTQ community. Can we, get into some specifics? What does that look like in 2025?
Oh, absolutely. Roe highlights these really cool grassroots initiatives popping up, like the Black LGBTQ Alliance. They're all about action, providing resources, pushing for those policy changes, and offering support that's really tailored to what this community needs.
That's got to be so important. It's one thing to just talk about making change. It's a whole other thing to create these systems that actually help. What kind of resources are we talking about here?
Well, they kind of do it all. Connecting folks with therapists who really get their experiences, setting up mentoring for young people. They even have workshops on stuff like managing finances, career building. They're really trying to hit every angle.
It really sounds like they get it,
Yeah.
Like a more well-rounded way to support this community. Recognizing that they need more than just basic safety and security, they need a chance to really thrive. Now, Roe also talked about social media, how that's becoming a tool for resilience, right?
Oh, yeah. Social media in 2025, it's tricky, can be good or bad, but we're seeing this community use it in some really amazing ways. You've got platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they're sharing their stories, connecting with one another, raising awareness like never before.
It's that whole idea of solidarity, right? Building that sense of community.
Exactly. Think about it. You're feeling isolated, maybe even misunderstood, and then suddenly you find this whole online community that gets you, that supports you. It's like this virtual support system.
And it's more than just support, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. These online communities are getting organized. They're putting together protests. They're raising money for different causes. It's really inspiring to see how they're taking these digital tools and creating real change in the world.
It shows how much drive and creativity this community has. They're not waiting for permission. They're taking what they have and making something powerful. Now, we've talked about the hard stuff, the hate crimes, the legal battles. But even with that, Roe really emphasizes celebrating joy and resilience, doesn't she?
She does. I think it's one of the biggest takeaways from this whole piece. It's this reminder that even when you're facing so much adversity, it's vital to hold on to hope, to find those moments of joy, to celebrate all the strength and beauty within this community.
It's like refusing to let the struggle be the only thing that defines you.
You got it.
It's about taking back your joy, taking back your power, even when the system is stacked against you.
Roe even argues that finding joy, that celebrating resilience, it could be a form of resistance. It's like saying, hey, we're not going to be broken. We will not let hate win.
I love that. So powerful. Now, I remember something in the outline about representation. Does Roe get into that at all?
She does, and it's a big one. She makes the point that seeing yourself reflected in the world around you, whether it's in movies, music, books, it can have such a huge impact on how you see yourself.
And for a community that's been so marginalized, so misrepresented, to finally see themselves in a positive light, that's got to be validating.
Absolutely. It's about seeing yourself as the hero, as someone worthy of love and respect. It's about pushing back against those harmful stereotypes and showing the world the full range of experiences within the Black LGBTQ community.
So it's more than just entertainment then. Representation is about changing the whole narrative,
Yeah.
changing how society views this community. Now, while the article celebrates all this resilience, it also doesn't let the rest of us off the hook. Ro's pretty clear that allies need to step up.
Oh yeah, she doesn't mess around. She lays out what true allyship looks like.
Hmm.
And it's about more than just saying the right words. It's about taking action.
So what kind of action are we talking about? What can our listeners do to go beyond just being passive and become those active allies?
Well, education is a huge one. Taking the time to learn about the history of the Black LGBTQ community, understanding the issues they're up against, familiarizing yourself with the right language, all of that.
It's about ditching the assumptions and actually seeking out the right information. Where would you send folks to learn more?
There's so many good resources out there now. Following Black LGBTQ activists and organizations on social media is a great start. Reading books and articles written by folks within the community, checking out documentaries and movies that center those experiences.
It's about diversifying the voices you're listening to, right? Getting those perspectives that maybe challenge your own way of thinking.
Totally. And once you started learning, it's about putting that knowledge to use, challenging injustice whenever you see it in your own little corner of the world.
So not enough to just like read a book and call it a day.
Right. It's got to be more than that.
It's about taking that knowledge and actually doing something.
Exactly. It can start small, like calling someone out when they use harmful language, speaking up when you witness discrimination happening.
Donating to those organizations, doing the work on the ground, going to rallies, even just thinking about how to make your own spaces more inclusive.
Yeah, all of that. It's about creating those safe and welcoming environments wherever you can.
That all sounds great, but I think sometimes folks get kind of overwhelmed by the idea of allyship, like they have to be experts overnight or something. What would you say to someone who's feeling that way?
I'd say start small. Just start somewhere. Allyship's a journey. It's not about getting to some perfect end goal. It's about showing up consistently, putting in the work, and being willing to learn and grow along the way.
Progress over perfection.
Yes, exactly that. And remember, even the smallest actions can add up. If you see something, say something. If you have a platform, use it to lift up those voices that need to be heard. If you have resources, share them with those who need them most.
We've all got a part to play in making the world a little more fair, a little more equal.
That's the whole point. And speaking of roles to play, Roe actually goes into how important representation is in things like media and the arts. She argues that seeing yourself portrayed in a positive, authentic way, it could be so incredibly powerful.
Makes you think, right? About how we need to support Black LGBTQ creators. The filmmakers, the musicians, writers, artists, their stories need to be told.
I couldn't agree more. Supporting their work, spreading their stories, pushing for more diversity in all the media we take in, it all helps to shift that narrative and create a world that's more understanding, more inclusive.
It's about recognizing that art has this power to change how we see the world, how we see each other.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the tough stuff, the challenges, the history, the legal battles, even the mental health crisis that's happening. But we've also explored the incredible resilience of this community, the rise of all these grassroots movements, the power of social media, the importance of representation, and how allies can step up.
It's been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about this community, about their strength, their hope, even when they were facing so much.
Me too.
Yeah.
And as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to hear from our listener. What's sticking with you? What are some of the new things you've learned? What actions are you feeling inspired to take?
We'll be back in just a sec to finish up this really important conversation. We're back, and I gotta say, after all that, I'm feeling, a lot of things. The weight of what the Black LGBTQ community is up against, but also this huge sense of hope, seeing how resilient they are.
It is powerful, right? That mix of emotions. And I think Roe really captures that well. She doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but she also shines a lot on the strength, the joy, the absolute determination to create a better future.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, look, this is the reality, the good, the bad, the messy, all of it. Now what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. And I think that's the question we all need to sit with. What part can each of us play in dismantling these systems of oppression, in building a world where everyone feels safe, valued, respected?
Because it's not enough to just know about these issues, right? We got to be actively involved in finding solutions.
Absolutely. And that can look so many different ways. It could be educating ourselves and the people around us, challenging those harmful words and behaviors we see, supporting businesses earned by Black LGBTQ folks, or giving to organizations working towards equality.
It's about realizing those small actions really can add up. seeing something, saying something. If you've got a platform, use it to amplify those voices that need to be heard. And if you've got resources, well, share them with those who need them.
And it's about staying persistent. This fight, it's a marathon, not a sprint. There's going to be setbacks, there's going to be challenges, but giving up isn't an option.
Gotta keep pushing forward, gotta keep having these tough conversations, working towards a better world. One thing that really hit me from the article was the focus on intersectionality. Like, we can't tackle homophobia and ignore racism, and vice versa.
So true. These issues are all woven together. We can't forget that. You can't dismantle one form of oppression and leave the other standing.
Our liberation has got to be for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. The future isn't set in stone. We have the power to shape it through the choices we make, the actions we take, that commitment to creating a world where everyone can truly thrive.
It's a reminder that hope, it's not passive. It's a force, and it needs us to show up, to speak out, to fight for the world we want to see.
So I ask you, what are you going to do? How are you going to use your voice, your resources, your own sphere of influence to make a difference?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, challenging, maybe even empowering. Remember, we're all in this together, and together we can create that brighter future.